48 hours deployed with the Royal Marines. Let's go.
My latest assignment, I was sent to Estonia and I got to see the Royal Marines from a different perspective. They're here on Baltic Protector and I'm going to tag.
You know, that's always eye-opening when you go back after several years, or just visit some buddies that are still in, come up with things you never even thought existed. It just feels different. If you guys have done that, put it in the comments. Gone back and visited your buddies, or you've gone back in after a few years.
I'm going to see what they're doing and how they've been working with the Estonian military. I serve with 845 Squadron, command the helicopter force. They're basically the guys responsible for dropping the Marines into action from the air.
So we arrived in Estonia a few days ago and we inserted tactically into this defensive position. So
you guys that have ever dug those fighting positions, trench in this case, as he calls it, one thing I did learn very quickly is you want to make sure you dig it at elevation if possible, or dig a hole somewhere in the middle so the water drains right. Otherwise, the whole thing's like a mud pit when it rains. Doesn't make it much better, but at least hopefully it doesn't go where you're sleeping or where your gear's at.
Been here now for about 16 hours, just putting in this block with our heavy weapon systems.
Hi, I'm Marine Speed of X-Ray Company FSG. Let me show you around my gun position. As you come in, beautifully spacious, a little bit overhead cover there. We've got one man currently resting, we're working off a 3-man rotation.
I'm going to assume those positions were set up before they got there. Maybe they trained in Estonia often. Can't imagine they dug these out and built them and fortified them like this on an exercise, but they're pretty good positions. They got the trusses and things holding up the ground. Like I say, they probably have it dug out so at least the water drains to one spot so you're not laying in it.
A little cubby hole to your left there, so the two of us will be in there. We'll work on a 3-rotation basis, so 1 man off and 2 man on at any given time. The gun itself actually operates using 2 men. It can be done with just 1 bloke. Another company of 4-5 Commando Yankee currently conducting a raid, so we're stopping any enemy reinforcements coming.
So it looks just like a 50 cal. Yeah, you can operate with 1 guy, but the feeding, reloading, definitely helps to have 2 people. Because if they do have a jam or feed problem, it's going to be a real pain in the ass to get it ready to rock and roll again without that second man.
We've got gun positions dug in with arcs out, covering all this sort of area you can see to your front. So any sort of enemy force coming in will get malices.
After chatting to the guys in the gun position, I headed over to the control point, which is pretty much a hole in the ground as well.
I'm Captain Thomas Wiegman. I've worked.
That's the control point. Oh man, it looks like the officers don't get the good stuff. I'm assuming maybe this is just a meet-up point or something. Looks just like a hole in the ground with some pallets.
7 battery, it's part of 2-9 Commando Royal Artillery. So this is the TAC headquarters. It's where the OC and his FST and signalers currently work out of. I'm the FST commander, and between myself and the MFC Alpha there, we're linking in with an observation post about just a kilometre away.
So for all the airsofters and paintballers, I don't know how many guys actually do this. They stay out for several days. First thing you start thinking about, obviously, the water, where you're taking a dump, where you're pissing. You can't have like your buddy who pisses right next to the position. You're there 3 days. Otherwise, the thing starts stinking. So you forget about little stuff like that when you're out on an exercise. In this case, there's not a lot of foliage or some trees off in the distance. The little stuff, and if it does rain, that can make for a long 3 days.
I made my way over to a mortar troop, who are located behind the firing positions.
So this is where we've been living for the last day or so. The main thing is keeping it nice and tidy because it's only a small space. You work in 3-man crews in mortars. So you've got Ricky and Jay just over there. So between us, we man the 81mm mortar.
So in the scheme of things, you're the enemy. 2 things you want to hit right off the bat, probably the machine gunner and the mortarman's position, right? And then the command and control element, if you can find it. So these guys are probably set up in some relation to the machine gun pit, the machine gun area. So these guys are going to be a high-value target. If you can take out the mortarman, it's going to save you a lot of headaches, and then or take out the machine gunner. So when you think about how they set up, there is some strategy to it. I can't really tell how they're set up. But that gets interesting when you think about how the enemy may attack, how you're going to have your areas of fire, what you're going to cover, how far out your positions are. Maybe you've got it marked in your head, or when you set the position up, hey, this is 100 meters, this is 200 meters. So your gun's already gauged that way. Just little stuff, even in exercises, makes it interesting.
Base, it's quite minimal, so you've got two little holes, I guess you'd call them. So Big Ricky's over in that one by himself in the corner, and then Jay and myself squeeze into this one just in here. It's a bit of a tight squeeze. You got the roll mats down, so it's a bit more comfortable. Got the sleeping bag just rolled up to the end.
I'll be sleeping out.
Yeah, I don't know if the Royal Marines do regular activities or training exercises here. That's a pretty nice setup he's got there. You show up there with the dirt falling on your head. Pretty well protected too as things go for these kind of fighting positions that are on the fly. Everyone's used to seeing the big fighting positions that you see now in Afghanistan and Iraq that have been set up by the engineers. And these kind of things generally are makeshift deals on the fly with what you have. I'm not sure about this position just based on the metal surrounding, kind of holding it up, trussing it in sandbags. But you guys know, Royal Marines out there, put it in the comments.
Yeah, there's not a lot of room.
My name's Sam from 4th Route 1 section, and this is our trench tour.
If you'd like to follow me down to the admin area, you see there's admin absolutely everywhere. Obviously, luxurious sleeping quarters here. Everyone's obviously very, very keen to be shown on film. Following around to our, I don't know, our central position, our prime viewing spot. Good arcs out onto prime Estonian real estate.
Definitely prefer this kind of thing. It's to be at least cold and not hot. So if it's hot, humid, muggy, it usually means there's going to be rain. You're going to be sitting in a mud pit, and you can never cool off in something like that. Now this, it looks like it's relatively temperate weather, so I'm sure they appreciate that. Now if it gets down to like the frozen, chosen Korean type weather you see in the Korean War, not much you can do. They do have some cover at least to keep the elements off of them. And I think at least the gear's a lot better today than it was looking back at the Korean War.
Further on, got a well-stocked ammo point here for what looks to be a very feisty night shoot. Lots of Illume, lots of tracer, lots of all sorts of good stuff.
One thing you learn the first time you do a night fire, you never realize this unless you're an avid gun person, is that bullets don't fly straight. They fly kind of on an arc. You think about it, you learn about it, but you don't really fully understand it to see those tracers flying and the directions which they fly. I always found that to be interesting when you're sitting there, especially as a non-gun guy who went in.
To Amari Air Base, where 845 Squadron, my old squadron, flew me out to RFA Lime Bay. The Baltic Protector deployment involves some 3,000 personnel with 17 vessels from 9 different nations.
We identify targets out on the ground. It's got good thermal optics, pretty light, and it's nice and nimble for us. This is a grenade machine gun, again one of my personal favourites, and a lot of the lads will say the same. Same as the other weapon systems, we can hit people out to about 2.2 kilometres with this. It's loud, it's heavy, and it creates a big bang at the other end. It's always good. Finally, this is a GPMG SF, the sustained fire roll. It goes on a tripod, you can man pack it, it's nice and light, and you get a real good rate of fire. It's pretty light for the lads to carry.
In the early hours in the morning, I'll be joining them on a beach assault. Their mission is to try and liberate Saaremaa Island, where they'll be up against the EDL, the Estonian Volunteer Defence League.
So in theory, all these beach landings and amphibious missions would be at night, right? Undercover. Makes it a lot easier. It's a lot harder to fight at night, especially for the enemy to find you and shoot you. But it looks like they're landing part of this during the day, which obviously if you look at Iwo Jima, lots of landing during the day, things that don't always go as planned.
It was interesting to see how both these forces operate differently and how they've learned from each other.
I agree with him. When you get around foreign troops, it's amazing how many things cross borders, language barriers, as far as tactics go. And that's what he's saying. Most other Allied troops understand enough English, but if you get, say, around the Thai Marines, maybe they don't speak as much English, but the tactics and leadership is pretty much a constant across the board nowadays, at least with, we'll call it, top tier types of military. I'm not talking about the military of Sudan or Chad. One thing these guys are not going to like at the end of that exercise is cleaning those weapons.